This debate has been titled User-Generated Content, Laughable or Laudable? We've had many discussions this week about new approaches to delivering creativity, new media, crowdsourcing, social media, mashups, user-generated content, and many people are delivering some tough messages this week about the unprecedented change our industry faces. So UGC is one of the key catalysts for this change and what we want to debate here today. It's been called the democratization of creativity, placing brands in the hands of users and handing consumers control, or indeed, actually, consumers taking control themselves. But does it really work that way? Is it as simple as giving ordinary people the opportunity to represent our brands and to steward our brands in today's marketplace? But even more than that, how do you measure success in this place? So brands are increasingly looking to harness the collective knowledge and imagination of the online community, but how far should we let this go as brand stewards? What if brands genuinely handed the reins over to the consumer? So how would it change the agency model? So I'm delighted to welcome four, although we can only see three here at the moment, but four industry experts from very different backgrounds to discuss this subject. First, the co-founder of UGC and mobile film specialist, MoFilm. Back in May, MoFilm launched a novel initiative bringing together global brands who each issued a brief to deliver to the advertising industry or challenge the advertising industry the making of an ad. Can I welcome Ralph Cochrane?
Thank you.
Joining Ralph on stage here is the CMO of one of these brands. Previously the Executive Vice President of Marketing for Walt Disney's Parks and Resorts. He's a member of the World Economic Forum's Global Agenda Council on Marketing and Branding, easy for me to say. He has won an Emmy, 2 Cannes Silver Lions, and now he is the CMO and Vice President at Hewlett-Packard. He's Michael Mendenhall. Michael, welcome. Representing the agency community, we have a legend in his own lunchtime. He is he's the co-founder and managing partner of CHI, one of the top 15 agencies in London. His agency is also the recipient of 25 Lions and 10 Golds. Welcome, Johnny Hornby. And finally, a man who is a writer, a director, an actor, a producer, and an author. He also runs his own film and advertising production company called 4 Acres and a Mule, something I want to ask him about later. He is the pioneer of the do-it-self school of independent film. He is Spike Lee. Now, it's hot down here, so the general idea is that these guys do the talking, but before we do that, I wanted to show you something to stimulate this debate. It's just a brief history of some of the UGC that has been placed in the market, but also the brands or even bans and the responses to these pieces of work to get this debate going. Let's run the film.
It's my home, it's where I live. I've lived here for a long time and I've never seen anything like that. Never. I mean, you know, you get vandals, you get graffiti on the walls, but it's too much, in my opinion. Consideration, isn't it?
Yeah, that boys, we got our vacuum cleaner.
You're a fool, man. Oh, it was dual bag.
And dual bag doesn't know why he's here.
I realize it's not the most romantic gift, but
There are many reasons a man can end up in here.
Hey, dual bag. All I did was tell my wife that her mom looked hot in a bathing suit. It was a compliment. I was just trying to be nice.
That's bull.
She was smoking. She was smoking.
I told my wife that staying home with the kids was a heck of a lot easier than having to actually work for a living.
Will I finally get that big promotion?
Promotion? Not in your future.
Very good. Very good. So, humour is challenging, the counterpoint to consumerism. There's something vaguely rebellious about some of that content. Is it the punk rock of communications? So, let's ask the panel what they think in general about UGC. Spike.
Don't start with me. Please.
I'll pass it over to Michael then.
Okay. Well, I think from what you can see here, I think it's really about definitions and how we define groups. And we say user-generated, and I think most people believe that that means it's not professional content. And I think as you think about the web and the ability to look at the long tail and source and multiple source talent, because you say user-generated does not necessarily mean that it's not professional content or that the people are not creative. And I think you have to think very differently about how you can go out and source the World Wide Web, and that not always are the best and brightest in creative talent and or production talent located in a physical space that's bricks and mortar, that's conventional. There are very talented people out there who we would consider in this user-generated group that are quite talented, and in fact the web allows you to peruse the entire world for the best and the brightest. So I think as you think about how we define things and how you define who is a user-generated person, who is a journalist today, who is a producer, who is a network today, don't think conventionally. And I think it really has to do with how we put definitions to conventional thinking. And I think you can see extraordinary work when you think about user-generated content or how you source the World Wide Web for the best creative. And I think the other thing that I want to say about user-generated content and what you see in sort of sourcing and using the World Wide Web is that it ultimately gets down to story, right? A lot of people talk about the channels, the digital channels, and which screen. You know, we're talking about the World Wide Web, we're talking about mobility, and I think ultimately, whether it's 10 seconds, it's 2 minutes, or it's a 2.5 hour feature, it really is about great storytelling, right? Great script. And if you start with the best creative elements fundamentally, no matter which screen you're on, you can adapt to, but have a great story. And I think this is representative of that. And what we did, HP, with MoFilm, was representative of that. I mean, we saw great creative coming from the web. And again, just because we don't deem these people professional does not mean they're not talented.
So does that put agencies out of business, though?
No, I think agencies can use this as you think about how agencies and organizations used to define freelance. I would say to the creative community, this is just another resource. And I would hope that all the creative agencies that are here today would think about how they use the World Wide Web and the long tail to come up with the best and brightest ideas. Because again, I don't think they're conventionally located in just one city in the world in one building.
I think also, Nick, if you look at your awards this week, there's been some fantastic content, which I'm sure we'll show and talk about. There's also some quite average content, if I'm honest about it. It doesn't sound very popular to say that. You should say it's all brilliant, but it wasn't all brilliant. You know, the truth is, just like American Idol or Pop Idol or whatever, if you get a huge volume of people to take part, most of the people don't sing very well, and 10 that get through to the final sing pretty well, and the person that wins goes on to be a pop star because they're fantastic. And I think we saw that this week, which is there was some fantastic content. But I think the challenge for agencies isn't just to say, do we take a brief and stick it out on the web and see what comes back? Because I think still there's a role for marketing people, there's a role for agencies, there's a role for people to be professional and think about brand stewardship in the way you talked about at the beginning. But I also think there's a role for agencies to provide a context for user-generated content, which says it doesn't have to be that we find the next Spike Lee on the web, which is a fantastic thing that you can do, but it could also be that we create a framework where people can enjoy themselves. We created something this year, which won a line this week, which is called The Forever Story, which was a user-generated story where we wrote the first 30 words and we asked people to create the longest story of all time. Yep. And a lot of what was contributed was great. Some of it wasn't so great, but people enjoyed it, and every time they wrote 30 words, £1 was contributed to children with autism, and that was, I think that the challenge for agencies is how do we create formats that people want to participate in? So the power of participation, I think, is the thing that is coming out of this for me. And I think our challenge as an agency and all agencies is to say, how do you create stuff for brands and brand owners that people will want to participate in, rather than just say, let's take the brief and stick it on the web and see what happens.
Very good. Spike, you said yesterday that you don't have to go to film school to be a filmmaker. You think that's true?
That's true, even though the top 3 winners were former film students. But I think that I'm a professor at NYU, New York University, for the past 12 years. I'm also a graduate for there. I'm also artistic director of the New York University Graduate Film School. And I tell my film students that there's no one way to do anything, so people have to find their own paths. And I kind of disagree with you a little bit. I don't think that it's a matter that some of the stuff wasn't great. That's not the point. I mean, is all the stuff we've seen on television great? No. A lot of it sucks. So I think that it's given, I think what this Mo film thing has demonstrated, that there's abundance of talent out there. And young people, or they might even be old, talented people need a place to show their talent. They need a showcase, they need a platform, they need a venue. Because you can have talent at the wazoo, but before you had to be in New York or LA. I'm just talking about for America. But now with the YouTube, you can put something up and people are gonna track you down. Same thing in sports. Like last night, excuse me digressing, but last night was the NBA draft. National Basketball Association. Before, 20 years ago, all the players were just American. Now, if you could play basketball, I don't care if you're in, I don't know, wherever you are, if you could play, someone saw you and you're gonna get, and I can say this is the same vehicle that let this show I have talent. I might not have the proper degree or the proper training. I've not come up through the correct ranks, but this is what I can do.
I think creativity is not owned by centralized, powerful sort of organizations, which we've seen in the past. And I think, again, the web has allowed you to go out and resource, and they're really talented people, and I would agree with you, Spike.
So I think it's probably, we've started talking about the MoFilm initiative. I think it's would only be fair to ask Ralph, who's one of the co-founders of MoFilm, to explain what it is and what we've done this week.
Well, what we did this week was to put together 12 brands who I think you described yesterday as guinea pigs, which is pretty fair. We had this crazy idea, why not allow the MoFilm community, which is ordinary filmmakers all over the world. It's not just the US, UK, it's India, it's Sri Lanka, it's China now, to make an ad for some pretty famous names, which is very brave. So, I mean, many of the brands are here, and it's great that Michael's here from HP as well, but these were household names who let us pretty much experiment with that in this UGC way. And to respond, I suppose, to some of the quality issues, I mean, there's two things that happened. One is the community also has a voice. So you actually get some feedback, which I don't know. I mean, this is my second time to Cannes Lion. I'm not from the advertising industry originally. I'm a techie nerd originally and then into entertainment. But, do you listen would be my question back to what ordinary people actually think of these brands. Do they think the same as you? So that's been really interesting to see some of the creativity that's come back. And you see that in the three winners, which are in the front row, and I think we'll show their films in a little while. The other thing that's happened is just the speed that you get stuff back. We had this competition open for 6 weeks, that was it. Mainly because we had to come to Cannes Lion, so it was kind of, crazy timescales. And of course there's the worry, are we going to get great content? We got 350 films, of which I would say 140 probably are great. They may not be on brand, they may not be on brief. They may have been stopped by the brand police in a couple of occasions, as we saw last night. Some of them are superb. And, I think that's a great testament to the brands that gave this a go, HP, Nokia, and others who are here, but also the people around the world that, just ordinary, maybe some of them are filmmakers, but a lot of them, and in fact, one of the winners, it's the first ad he's ever made. So I think that's great. That's a real story.
So one of the reasons that user-generated content can work is because it's picked up and shared. And do you think it's possible for brand-assisted content to have that same community feel, impact, the way that things pass through the web so fast is usually because of the sharing issues that we see. So what do you reckon the difference is between brand-assisted and genuinely generated content by consumers?
I mean, the best brand-assisted work I've seen, and maybe I haven't seen all of it, but the work that seems strongest to me is that work that shares people's passions. So if you look at brands that have joined in with things, and I think it's not surprising, maybe sometimes it's with sponsorships or whatever. So if you take the X Factor stuff Carphone did last year, people love to sing. So and they love to watch people singing, and they love talent contests. So create a talent contest that people can join in with, and I think join in is not a bad message for agencies, which is to understand the passions that people have and to find a way for them to join in. And actually this initiative is a good example of that. There's a 350 people who have a passion for making films, and it's not completely user generated because Accenture and MoFilm created the environment in which people could show their films to the rest of the world. And I think that's probably the analogy that we should keep in our heads, to say, how do we as brands create things that allow people to join in with and participate with? And I think it's great that some people are incredibly talented in it. I also think it's honest to say that some aren't, because it's just true.
So do you think now's a good time to have a look at these films? Yeah? We're going to show you, I think it's 5 of the top 12. These aren't the top 3, just to stimulate the debate about the content and the quality that we've seen. So can we show that film, please?
It's been 17 years now since we first met, and we've shared every moment since. First days, birthdays, silly days, and monumental days. But through different schools and different cities, we've always stayed connected. So now we can be together, even when we're apart. Men.
Doritos Collisions. It's 2-0, and I'm sorry to say that may very well be good night for the home team. Yes, folks, they need a miracle. Wait a minute, it's a counter-attack. It may be the miracle we've been waiting for. Look at that, it's a goal! Is this the start of one of the most remarkable comebacks in history? And here comes another attack. Oh my, it's 2! Time is running out. What's this? They've done it! They've only gone and done it!
We will sing. There will be good times ahead. Summer's gone. There will be good times ahead. So just hold on. 'Cause there will be good times ahead. This life is long. But there will be good times ahead.
Very good. So, Spike, what do you reckon to those pieces of film?
Well, I liked them, and as I've been saying since I got here, I judged the final 12. And I know for sure there's some gems that didn't even make the cut. And again, anytime there's an award procedure, you have judges, and the stuff depends upon the judge's taste. So that's why Raging Bull cannot win Best Picture, but Ordinary People can, you know. So, again, I'm very much enthralled with this user-generated content. I think that this is just the beginning. I know that you got 12 very brave brands, and thank you for, you know, HP being up here. And as I said before, a lot of people looking at this, and so they're going to see that this is quite a success. And so London's next.
Yeah.
I think there'll be maybe double, hopefully, double the number of brands that are going to jump into this, because these are times now that you really can't lay back in the cut and see what's going to happen. The times are too volatile, and you got to try to stay ahead of stuff. And I think that the 12 brands are here are going to really, you know, they help themselves by being brave enough to be this first group.
So, Michael, as one of these brave people, what's going to change in the way that you do things?
Well, I think certainly were great learnings for us relative to the brief and how people engaged with it, and whether you would do brand through this or product marketing against specific products. What we saw was a very high level of engagement, over 14,000 downloads of the brief. And what was amazing was the time compression, and you really need to understand, you know, when you think about the quality of some of the things you've seen, and the fact that there was 3 weeks, I believe, to do this, and we all scrambled quite a bit to participate. We were moving quite quickly, and for a company of HP's size, a company of the size of many of these brands that you see today, that's moving extraordinarily fast. And so I think, with the learnings we have relative to the input that goes out, it becomes very, very important, and great learnings there. We're very pleased. In fact, our winner will be showcased at the Sundance Film Festival coming up in January. What we said was the winner of the HP contest, because we're a major sponsor of Sundance, would premiere there. So we're excited to give sort of new creative talent the ability to be showcased, as well as the engagement piece. And I think you were referencing the interactivity, but the engagement, which becomes very important in marketing, and the engagement with brands, products, and services. And we saw an extraordinarily high level of engagement in a very short period of time. People want to participate, they want to be engaged, they want to be a part of the dialogue with companies. And I think as long as companies are transparent and authentic in their approach, you're going to get great work back.
And do you think there are implications for the cost of production, for the range and number of films that a brand can now have in its stable of communications? Johnny, what do you reckon?
I think that's going to be very interesting to see what happens over the next few years with brands where traditionally you spend a lot of money on very few bits of production, and we were talking about this earlier, and then you broadcast it and you wait to see what happens. That was the old world. Mm-hmm. Today you can see what's happening straight away, and lots of times, it's happened to us, people have taken commercials we've made and made them better, and changed them and put different music on them and enhanced them. And I think in the future, I think agencies and brands are going to try and create a lot more stuff, rather than say it's about broadcasting. Just because the numbers say you can't broadcast to people anyway. It's too diverse. The long tails, the long tail. So therefore, I think we're going to be in a place where you're going to have to create lots of different content, and a lot of it you're going to either partly create, completely create, or co-create with consumers, and you're going to see it coming back to you in different frames. And I think for the arrogance of agencies, what they're going to learn is that, as we did see in some of the best work, I wasn't being critical earlier with that. I think there's some fantastic work. There's some average work which is actually completely parallel with television. It's true. Most commercials are instantly forgettable, even though they're produced by people who pretend to be, professional. We've won 25 Lions. We've also, if there were some turkeys, we probably would have won.
But
some
also,
others.
in your defense, because I also have an agency, is that a lot of times the client kills the best work. And so yes, we've all been there. We've all been there. And so these young people out there in the world didn't have somebody saying, no, 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 no. Of course, the no came later, but the no did not come at that creative moment. They were able to create what they wanted.
Yep.
And I bet there's a lot of things, not just HP, but a lot of these brands would have killed some of these things.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even let them get shot. And once they came up, they might have said, you know what? I would have killed that, but now I've seen it, realized this can work, because people are terrified. When we're in the economic crisis, not just advertising, it's film. People are scared, and when they're scared, they're paralyzed, and they don't want to make a move, anything to the left or to the right. They got to go straight down the middle, and they're not going to do anything to jeopardize, because they know people looking at them left and right. We got to hit this number. If I go over here, my head's on the block. I got a house. I got a car. My kids are in private school. I'm got my summer house. I'm not fucking with it. So I'm gonna go. I'm not jeopardizing the shit. I'm gonna pick, excuse my profanity, I'm gonna pick the least, it's gonna be bland, vanilla, boring, which in turn is gonna directly affect your brand, I think, in a negative manner. And this, and again, I don't mean to monopolize the microphone because see we're on the clock. For me, one of my mentors is Philip Knight, the owner of Nike. The only reason why I'm in advertising today is because back in 1986, I came to Cannes with a film called She's Gonna Have It. It's Nola Darling in French. And the character I played, Marge Blackman in the film, wore Air Jordans, and Michael Jordan was his favorite player. And two guys at Wyden Kennedy, Jim Riswell and Bill Davenport, Wyden Kennedy being Nike's agency, saw the film, saw the character I played, saw this character I played was in love with Michael Jordan and the sneakers, said, let's put Mike and Spike together. And so, you know, those commercials were really responsible for blowing Nike up. But the reason why I want to use Philip Knight here is because he's a visionary. The man, at the time, the only sneaker in the world was Adidas and Converse. That was it. But he was making the soles of his sneakers out of his waffle iron in his kitchen and selling Nikes out of his trunk. Ted Turner said, I want to have a 24-hour news cable. Lock him up, send him to the mental institution. So anytime people are visionary, they're crazy, what are they doing here? Get rid of them. But when are you going to see somebody that's very talented that's normal? We just lost a giant yesterday, Michael Jackson. No matter what you want to say, whether he's eccentric or not, there's a price to pay for that type of talent. God's just not going to give you all that talent and you're going to be normal. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah, very good.
Mozart, Miles Davis, Van Gogh, Billie Holiday, we go down the line. We go down the line. And the people, like yourself, you got to take some risk. And I know there are going to be some times where you're like, you know what, this might be my job. But we only elevate as a society, as people, when people take risk. If people didn't take risk, we would still be who knows where. And that's my big conflict with advertising. That we have to take more risk, and I think that with user-generated content, that will help us. Like you said, a lot of this stuff is subpar, but I think there were instances where people had great ideals, but because they don't have the necessary skill set or the experience, they weren't able to realize that. So what? So you take that great ideal, hit them off some money, and use your own professionals in the agency to develop that thing so that this thing can work. And I'm going to be quiet.
Very good. So, excuse me, I guess I want to find out what happened in this process. Did we have some of the 12 clients pushing back on some of the content? How were they judging?
Could I possibly say if they did? No, I think partly because the timescales were so quick. I mean, there were some issues about rights and you know, we have a compensation model at MoFilm, which comes from the film industry, actually been very fair, 50-50 revenue split from anything we make and all that. And we had to explain a lot of that. So inevitably, it takes a long time to get on the purchase order system at HP and others. I've been unfair to my fellow speaker. But other than that, I think all of the brands entered it in the spirit that it was meant to be. I think we have, you know, some great people helping us, like Carla, who's in the audience, who managed all of this. So, you know, it was a great project to be involved in. That's my answer.
I don't think you're really telling us, are you? Did you push back on stuff, Michael?
No, we did not push back, and in fact, looked at it all. I don't know if this is, looked at it all pretty openly, and I was quite excited by it. I mean, I think for a tech company, we certainly hope to profess we understand this area. We're certainly building capabilities to exploit this area. And so for us, the minute we were approached, we were in, and it was really just moving at that quick pace. And I think, this will be a very robust area. When you think about by 2010, 70% of all content produced will be user-generated. So when you think about this, and you think about, again, the scale that the web brings, and that creative talent exists sort of everywhere on the planet, and it's about uncovering it, it's about finding it, it's about having them engage with your brand, it becomes very important. And we were incredibly pleased with the process, incredibly pleased with how things got selected, and are excited about showcasing our winner at Sundance. And it was interesting because someone said, well, where do you plan to air this? And I had to chuckle because it was like, air, wow, how conventional in thinking about how we distribute content today to say air. Maybe fiber or maybe through satellite, but certainly not always necessarily air. I think you'll see that we'll showcase the talent, we'll showcase the film. What they were referring to is the next one is the British, which is the London Film Festival, which is the next round of this work. And I think you'll see a lot of the brands returning who participated in this.
You coming back?
Yeah, we're coming back.
Good.
And I think you'll see, with the time, I think you're going to find even more extraordinary work being produced. And it's exciting to see the development of the young talent. It is in this climate, and you'll be happy to know, Spike, a couple days ago I spoke to the Young Lions and I talked about, it is about risk. It's about being brave in this environment. And it's not being afraid of the web and not being afraid of what you're going to hear about your brands. And this is why I said companies and brands that are authentic and transparent shouldn't worry in this space. And I think, it's great to see that level of engagement taking place with your product. And there's great insight for marketers, great consumer insight relative to what's being said. And I don't think as marketers, we listen enough. And listening becomes a great skill set when you think about the World Wide Web and customer engagement.
Very good.
I think you make a good point about bravery as well. You talk about the kind of clients you were talking about earlier, Spike, that, kill lots of good ideas, and that happens all the time. But I think what's interesting about this, and, your participation in this, and Best Buy participated in this, and it was an interesting conversation we were having about this last night with Barry Judge, who's the CMO there, where, he puts his content, whether it's agency produced or not, out there before it's finished and gets people's point of view on it, And I think that's a very different, and it takes a bravery to be transparent, to say, hey, what do you think of this? Here's our new logo. We haven't finished it yet. What do you think? Here's our film. We're thinking of running this one or this one. What do you think? And in the old world, there were too many people who were, too scared about their summer house to say, I don't want to do anything brave. I want to do something that won't get me fired. And I think what's interesting now is people being transparent enough to say, I'm going to put this stuff out there and think, what do people think of it? And I think co-creation is going to be an interesting place for agencies to think about, not just, are these, is it going to be user-generated? Is it going to be agency-created? I think it's going to be co-created, and I think it's an interesting place for us to evolve to say, how do we help make some of the very good ideas in there that could do with a little bit of help even better? And I think that's a challenge.
I think now's a good time to see our top three. They're not in 3, 2, 1 order. Maybe after we've shown you the films, I'll ask Spike to just talk about how he felt about the top three, but also particularly the winning film. So can we show the top 3 films, please?
I like to shoot video of what I see. It's the sort of my diary. What inspires me is the beauty of nature. It makes my life fuller. I was born and brought up on a farm in India. I've been living in Maine for about 31 years in Maine. I am a Mainer. As a student, I didn't have much technology at all. I didn't know what technology meant, really. Technology is a tool to helps to present the creative mind of people. I want to upload my videos so that I can interact with other people. I'm not that much technical savvy. I need help badly. My name is Govind Pailor. I am 68 years old. I am just an ordinary creative person.
In ancient times, people believed the world was flat. I always felt the same. Until you went to the other side of the world. Now, I know we share the same horizon. My sunset is your sunrise.
So we're timed out, guys. So what I want to do is just get a closing comment from our panel here. Spike.
Well, I'm very happy about the 3 finalists. I was able to spend a little time with them, and all of them have promised me that they're going to use this as an inspiration, a stepping stone to get where they want to be. I will talk a little more about the winner, and that is the Nokia spot. And again, this is me talking. I really like the simplicity. I like the narrative. And as you said before, I don't care what you do, it's the narrative. People ask me all the time, Spike, you go from commercials or feature films or documentaries, how you do that? I said, do you have to change hats or flip switches? I said, no, because everything I do, I'm still trying to find a narrative in it. And Hiroko did that. And very creative. And for me, what got me was the reveal, because we know he's in Japan, but we don't know where she is. And being a New Yorker, and then seeing the seeing the Statue of Liberty, that really got me at the end. So the simplicity, and I think a lot of times young filmmakers, when you have a limited, okay, you're going to do a 2-hour feature, okay, but when you got 30 seconds, a minute, 90 seconds, crawl before you can walk. Just try to keep it simple, tell the story, and I think that he did that effectively with this spot.
Great. Thank you. Probably wrap up. So I think I should wrap up, actually. It's very hot in here and out there, I'm sure. I'd like to thank our guests here, Spike, Michael, Johnny and Ralph. Michael, do you want to say something before we go?
I'm not going to use my time to say anything more, but I thought it would be nice if they're here.
Exactly, yeah.
Just bring the lights up and recognize the 3 winners.
Yeah, good idea.
Stand up.
Are we here? You're going to go to the stand now. Are you going to the stand next to give them just the bell?
And I would just say, be careful how you think conventionally. Be careful about definitions that exist today in our industries, because they have evolved, they have changed, and use the power and the scale that the World Wide Web brings you to aggregate the best talent that you can find as a company.
We're going to be recognizing the 3 guys on the MoFilm stand, which is also the bar downstairs after this session. So if anybody wants to come down, please do. And thank you very much to our panel, and thank you very much for you guys for participating.